Hey, everybody. I'm here with Eddie Siegel, CTO and co-founder of Fractional AI. Eddie, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit about Fractional AI and what do you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a dev shop that is specifically focused on challenging production applications that leverage LLMs in some way. So our customers tend to be people or companies with strong market positions, good, successful existing companies where they have some sort of process internally that maybe five years ago couldn't have been automated, now has gone from being impossible to automate to merely very, very difficult to automate. And then we try and build things around that. And that could look like workflow automations internally within the company. It could look like big new product features that make things easier for their customers. That really runs the gamut.
That's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about the founding story? How did you guys decide that this was going to be a company you were going to build?
Yeah, so I have two co-founders. We all originally met on the early team at LiveRamp. So I started as an engineering intern, eventually became a VP of engineering. My co-founder, Chris, who's now our CEO, was the top salesperson there. Travis, our third co-founder, went from intern to CEO. And so we all met very early on the LiveRamp team. Chris and I have been working together almost continuously ever since that was 12 or 13 years ago. Travis went on to start a company called Datavant, which has since had a giant exit. And so earlier this year, we were sort of talking together about what we could potentially do next. And I think we all realized that this was the first time in our career where there was one of these kind of Silicon Valley hype cycle type things that we actually felt had substance, that we believed in, that felt like it was going to create lots of value in the world. And when we were trying to think about how we wanted to sort of participate in that, we realized that a lot of the value that we believe is going to be unlocked in the world using AI is going to come in the form of these existing successful companies that can now automate things that couldn't have been automated before. Think about like an airline trying to automate customer service, or an ETL company trying to automate building API integrations or something like that, where a lot of value is going to be unlocked there, but that it's still very, very difficult, and that there's a very challenging sort of talent gap there. It takes a very high caliber sort of engineer to be able to do these kinds of projects, and these kinds of companies don't have great access to those people. So we wanted to build a place where we could be working on these really high impact, challenging problems, tapping into lots of value, but do it from a startup environment in San Francisco full of really talented, impressive people that actually attract the kind of talent we want.
That's really cool. Did you guys have a background at all in kind of development consulting or consulting in general? It seems like you guys were at kind of in-house at companies. So is this new?
So our entire history is as founders of product startups. Yeah. This is our first foray into services, or anything you'd call consulting. I would say we're not quite consulting, but we're like certainly professional services in some way. And really that came out of first principles for us. Like, we saw this as being the biggest pocket of value in AI that we thought we could tap into. And this seemed to be the way to do it. A lot of these sort of automations and things and product features that these companies need, they're somewhat bespoke. They don't really fit really well into the sort of set of turnkey products that you could build. Sometimes I like to think of, like, as an example, like there's like a pocket in the healthcare world called revenue cycle management, where like one of the things they do is if an insurance claim gets denied by an insurance company, these guys go write an appeals letter and try and fight the denial and say, this is why this person should have been covered. Do you want, like, this is the thing that's ripe for AI. It's something where AI can now be writing these appeals letters and be making these arguments that can sort of reduce a lot of the sort of human-powered toil that goes into this process. But who would you rather be? Would you rather be the existing revenue cycle management company with all the hospitals as customers that's been doing this for years with the playbook trying to automate this? Or would you rather be the two-person YC startup trying to tackle this industry from the outside? I want to be the incumbent there. But I think in order to actually build what they need, you have to build something very custom that fits into their current sort of workflow. Maybe leveraging off-the-shelf tools. We're not going to build an LLM from scratch. OpenAI is going to build something great there. But I think they need something bespoke, and the way they want to work with companies is to be able to supply exactly what they need.
So how do you guys think about, your upside? So, in general, like at product companies, you build something once, there's kind of zero marginal costs. You're able to get the company, sell some equity or something. So how does it work with you guys? Because you're going into each company and doing extra work, right?
Yeah, for sure. So like, this is something we had to, as founders, like kind of think through. Like, I think we all were like, had this sort of Silicon Valley sort of dogma in our head around like services is bad, and like had to kind of think about that from scratch. I think the more I think about it, the more that is just sort of like misleading advice. So first I'll say we're trying to build $100 billion plus services business here. So like we're trying to take the most ambitious swing possible. It looks very much like a tech startup. You're joining on an early team of an SF company where, you're getting a lot of equity and you're trying to build something huge. I think if you look around the world of existing services companies, like there's huge ones out there. Like, I don't know, Palantir is like a $150 billion company, Accenture is like a $250 billion company. There's like plenty of very large services companies. The challenge with them is that they kind of by default scale linearly with headcount, which I think is like actually fine if that was our destiny and we were going to like get to $100 billion like slightly slower. I think that's fine. But I think there's plenty of ways to sort of introduce like sort of hockey stick sort of growth. And so we look for opportunities where we can be compensated by sharing the upside of these projects. We're really looking for very high impact projects. And when they're very high impact, sometimes there's ways to share the upside. And that looks a few different ways. One way is we have customers that pay us in equity. So if we can sort of help transform the company, we can participate in the outcome. Another is you can just charge that way, where you just charge a customer for like, okay, we think that this is going to generate this much more revenue for you or save you this much in cost. We sort of split that. A more interesting kind of third way is partnering with folks like private equity firms, where we can go identify companies that are sort of ripe for AI disruption. Go buy that revenue cycle management company we were talking about before, where we write a check alongside of private equity. Maybe we're compensated in either equity or maybe it's out of the money call options, where we get a disproportionate amount of the upside if we can successfully transform that company. That has like a really great set of side effects for the talent we're trying to attract too. The kinds of engineers we're hiring, they're very seasoned startup generalists. And I think within that pool, we tend to over-index for people that are sort of entrepreneurial in nature. And if we're doing those sorts of deals, we actually have like a really interesting set of ways to kind of like fuel their entrepreneurship, right? If you normally join a startup, if you want to go leave to start your own company, the best thing you can hope for is the founders go like, great, we're that sounds awesome. Like maybe we write the first check. Here we might be able to hand you, a starter kit. Like we've invested in a company that needs a CTO, and like here's something that has product market fit and customers, and like you're kind of ready to go. So we kind of look for all these sort of win-win-win kind of ways to introduce the hockey stick into the business.
So can you walk me through kind of what a day in the life looks like, maybe in a project in general, or just give me the vibe of what the company feels like right now? You mentioned you guys are in office. Tell me some more.
Yeah, for sure. So we're all in office downtown in San Francisco. It's got a very startup-y feel. We're around 15 people right now, so it's small, tight-knit. Engineers on the team are all on one project at any given time. So you're not spreading your attention among 10 different things. You're on a single project. Those projects last anywhere from, I think our shortest project has been around 6 weeks. I think our longest project is like a year plus and ongoing. Engineers don't typically stay on a project for that full length of time. So if you were on a year-long project, and you want to rotate off, part of the benefit of working here is that you get to see lots of different things and actually experience the sort of nitty-gritty of really valuable AI projects. So you wouldn't be sort of stuck on one project for a long time. But it's one of the really great things here is we're only working on impactful applied AI projects. So like before you even start on a project, this is something that a company is finding important. They want to pay a lot of money for this. It's fairly well defined ahead of time. And so a lot of your day is dominated by how do I actually tap into this value? How do I actually unlock it? And so it's some hybrid of spending your time developing and also sort of some time like understanding client needs, communicating your work, things like that. It's a very broad, high ownership, high impact, high ambiguity type of engineering that's done here. And then internally, we have a lot of support for this, where we're constantly doing things like we have these internal weekly lunches where engineers get together and they do deep dives on the projects they're working on and share best practices. I'm spread across every project, and part of my job is to make sure people are like aware of, hey, so-and-so on the team just worked on something similar and they just encountered a problem like this. You two should collaborate. It's a collaborative environment where even though there are sort of teams that are spontaneously forming around project work, there's a lot of cross-pollination between projects so that as a company, we can get very, very good at building with AI.
That's awesome. So, when you pitch candidates or engineers, and you tell them, fractional AI is a great place to work, what do you say?
So I think there are very few places out there where you can join not as an AI expert, very quickly become one, and actually experience a bunch of high value AI projects in the weeds. We don't actually filter for any AI expertise, right? We're hiring seasoned generalist engineers that impress us, that we think are super talented. They're going to join this team of other very stellar veteran engineers. Some of them are former founders, some of them are former engineering leaders. I think the average tenure on our team is certainly above 10 years of experience. I don't know, might be way above that. I'm not sure. And you can join this team without having a bunch of AI experience. Part of that is because there is no playbook yet. We're writing the playbook for how to actually get these AI projects into production. By the time you're done with your second project here, you're going to be like a world's foremost expert on how to build with AI. So you can come here, learn, and go anywhere afterward, and you do it working alongside some amazing people. And then the other piece, which I've already spoken about a little bit, is really the impact. A lot of the engineers here feel like, sometimes when you're in startup land, it's this sort of product market fit seeking exercise where you're trying to prove that maybe we can build something that somebody will want. Here, somebody wants this. It's like sort of part of the premise when you start working on a project. And so you're kind of guaranteed to only be working on impactful projects.
That's cool. Yeah, that sounds really nice, right? It's like, okay, we know somebody wants this. We can build it. We can focus on building it well, right, and works really well versus okay, maybe we'll have to throw it away tomorrow kind of thing.
Yeah, and you get to do it from a fun place. I want to work on Delta Airlines' most important AI project. I do not want to be an engineer at Delta Airlines. Those are very different things. And we get that very cool kind of best of all worlds sort of vantage point.
Talk to me a little bit about your culture. One of the ways that I've heard culture defined that I really like is the behaviors that you reward and the behaviors that you punish. So in context for fractional AI, what are those?
Yeah, that's a good way of framing it. I always struggle with the culture question because I feel like culture is something you feel, and it's hard to describe. I would say we were a very high autonomy, high impact sort of place. We don't expect people to come in and fit into some very narrow lane. We expect people to take a big chunk of owning the future of the company. We like to invest in people's ability to do that. A lot of our day-to-day thinking around, what's valuable, what do we reward, is around over-delivering for customers. We're given these high impact projects, but they're challenging. And despite the fact that they're challenging, we actually hold ourselves to this bar of over-delivering for clients. And so we're constantly thinking about how do we do that? And that drives a lot of our behaviors and a lot of our internal sort of reward mechanisms. Another set of things that we like to focus on reward is a lot of our value here is in being the experts for building with AI. That means doing a lot of experimentation. And so we actually have a company cultural value of overusing AI. The belief here is we're not experimenting enough with AI unless we're sometimes feeling oh, that was a waste of time to have done that. And so everything that everyone does at the company, we're always is there an AI tool that can help? Can I sort of investigate the sort of best practices here and become an expert on sort of way AI can help with this process? That can mean using new tools or, talking to people at other companies about how they've done things, or attending meetups, or building things, tinkering with writing stuff you might throw away that's for your own use. There's a lot of sort of overusing AI that goes on here. And
I have a question on that specifically. Yeah. So how do you think about, I'm sure when you're working with external customers, there's deadlines that they want and, some level of, outcome that they're looking for. And how do you balance that with taking the time to experiment, trying different things, and being okay, hey, we're going to hit a bunch of dead ends on the way?
Yeah, so that is very much the nature of these projects, and part of our job is to help the customer understand that. And so we are very much not the company that goes into a scoping session or a pitch meeting with a customer and just kind of says yes to everything. Our job is to help them understand the realities of this. At the scoping sort of stage of a project, we want to kind of do enough predicting of the future to try and get the customer comfortable that there's probably a there, but we don't overpromise. We try and stay true to what we actually believe is possible. We do develop pretty good intuition by doing all these projects about sort of what's doable and what's not. And so our ability to predict is not as bad as you might think, but we treat our customers as co-creators of the process. And so our standard playbook is we're meeting with these customers multiple times a week throughout an engagement. We position ourselves as the AI expert, but them as the domain expert. As we encounter sort of, hey, we're seeing that this is working well, this is working poorly, here's what the metrics are saying. They're co-authoring the decision of here's where we should spend our time next week, or, actually we should shift priorities around, et cetera, to make sure that we're kind of spending the time effectively.
And do you guys have product managers on your side, or do engineers work directly with the customer? How does that work?
So we're a growing and evolving org on this front. We actually had our first forward deployed product manager start yesterday. And so we're very much in the process of adding new roles. The initial kind of way we operated was we're just a team of engineers with a very broad skill set, sort of figuring it out. we're now adding more and more roles and figuring out how to best support the engineers so they can spend more time developing. But we do want engineers that have an appetite for some degree of being customer facing. You're sort of asked to help own the client outcome, but we're working on giving more and more support by adding more roles to the team.
So that brings me to my next question. When you think about selecting talent, what are the qualities that you look for? Maybe what's the most important quality that you look for?
We hold an extremely high bar internally. A lot of companies say they hold a high bar. Some companies do, and some companies mean it. Some companies don't mean it. We very, very much mean it. So a big part of the thing I'm looking for is like, would this person fit well on a team of otherwise insanely impressive people? And I think impressive people spike in different ways. Like some people are highly productive, some people are highly thoughtful, some people have incredible customer presence. And so I think we're actually pretty flexible in terms of the way that can look. The average person on our team is a generalist, someone with a lot of experience that can operate in ambiguity, right? Like there is no playbook for these AI projects yet. We're writing the playbook. And so you have to be the person on the frontier. You're in the wild west of AI development and you've got to kind of figure it out. And so you need a high degree of customer empathy. You need to be very productive. You need to be able to sort of like one day work on back-end tasks, the next day work on front-end tasks, the next day think about deployment. Sometimes you're playing machine learning engineer, and that's sort of just par for the course. And that has to feel kind of natural to you.
How do you test for that? How do you figure that out?
So our interview process is actually pretty straightforward simulation of the job. We do some programming together. It's building programs from scratch in the same way that you would do it on the job. We allow you to use your own kind of environment, your IDE, your tools. There's no artificial kind of constraints and limits. And we just see like, how do you handle like a fairly ambiguous but realistic, like this is kind of how a customer would describe a problem, go build the thing, and we see what happens. And then we do a few other kind of simulated things like that, where we're like, okay, here's a real customer problem that was given to us. This is actually something that we did. The customer said X, Y, Z. Our job was go figure out the architecture for this thing. What do you think is the architecture for this thing? And see kind of, can we picture having worked together on this project? And so we tend to aim for more just like fewer trick questions, fewer artificial simulations, and more, like what does the job look like?
When you think about as we think about 2025 and kind of the things that you're facing, what are the big opportunities and potentially the big challenges facing Fractional in the next year?
So one is that our high bar and our focus in San Francisco makes it hard to hire. It's a small pool of people that we're looking for. And so like the single bottleneck for the company right now is how fast we can hire. And we don't compromise on our bar. We currently don't compromise on being in person. And so that's the rate limiter on the business, which is actually good. That's kind of what we want it to be, right? Like one way of thinking about this business is it's a two-sided business where you've got projects on one side and you've got engineers on the other side. And in any two-sided business, there's going to be a rate limiter on one side. Like I want hiring to be the rate limiter, and I want the bar being high to be the reason. And so it's exactly where we want it to be. But that is, top of mind and one of the number one challenges for us. The other is continuing to refine this playbook that is earning us the right to kind of play at these more high impact outcome based sort of deals we talked about earlier, where because we now have all this experience building all of these interesting AI projects, we really are getting a lot better at, we know how to do them. We know what's possible, what's not. More and more when we encounter a new project, we go, okay, we've done something like this before. That is unlocking more opportunities for us to do those. Like we can actually go transform a company. And, we know if a company is a good target for a transformation because we know what's possible and what's not. That should enable us to do more creative, sort of upside-based deals. And we'll see that play out over the next year.
Awesome. So what can candidates do or applicants do to stand out to you guys? And maybe some things that people don't normally do.
I think what I would love to see candidates do is shake off the feeling that like an interview process is like this artificial constrained environment that has some set of rules they're supposed to play by, and really show up and just kind of like do what you would do reasonably on the job, or as close as possible. Obviously, you're going to be nervous and you're going to be, it's going to feel somewhat artificial, but that's what I would like to see more of. We try and design our interview process so that it is not meant to be gamed, right? It's not designed to study for, it's not designed with a set of specific answers we're looking for. We're not playing a check the box exercise. We're like, did the candidate answer this question correctly? We're trying to imagine, if I was sitting next to this person working on this project, would I think this would go well? And so having people sort of show up with the same attitude, trying to collaborate with us to work on a project would be very helpful.
And do you do anything to kind of set expectations? Because, a lot of engineers are like, all right, I got to grind on leak code before I even do the interview or something. Like, are you sending stuff to candidates to explain like, hey, this is what we're going to do?
I think we could be doing more.
Okay.
We do send them stuff. We have folks on our team that talk to them. We send them emails. We write it all out. We have a blog post or two on some of our philosophy around like using AI tools on interviews. But I don't think that every candidate sort of comes fully aware of all that anyway. And so I think it is sort of like always there's some push and pull.
Sure. So last question, fun question. Any hot takes, contrarian takes around building a company, being a founder, working in Gen AI, anything else on your mind?
I mean, one is just that services businesses can be incredible businesses. Another is that I think private equity is likely to be one of the biggest winners of this AI wave. Private equity-backed companies have all these incredible automation opportunities internally that we are now seeing up close. If you're outside of a business, trying to think of what AI product company to start, you think about one set of things, but like there's all these little pockets that like no one even knows exists in the world. Some 120-year-old big equipment manufacturer that's trying to digitize, 50 years worth of old dusty manuals that have been sitting on a factory floor, things that like you would never think about. And a lot of these companies are PE owned, ripe for some automation. They were previously people-powered businesses that can now scale without having to go. You can 10x the size of the business without having to 10x the headcount. And I think PE is going to be the beneficiary of a lot of that.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Eddie, for your time. This has been really awesome to hear about Fractional. If people want to learn more about Fractional, where should they go?
Go to fractional.ai.
Awesome. Thanks, Eddie.